Welcome to episode 19 of the Can You Geek podcast. My name is
You had
Steve.
to think about it again.
I
we
did.
just went over it, Steve.
I
we
know.
just went over it, and you still had to talk.
I'm such a failure. So, yes, I'm Steve. That's Errane, and the cough is
Hello.
a special guest.
He coughed his way into our hearts.
He did. Coughing his way into your dreams.
You have to forgive me. The
Oh, no.
pollen count's been up.
Not at all. So, it's kind of a tradition. You're the second one, but we're making it a tradition is...
Yeah, it's our new tradition.
Yes.
It's a tradition now. With him doing it, it becomes a tradition.
Yes, introduce yourself.
My name is Joe. I'm a DM, and I love long walks on the beach under the moonlit. A nice Merlot.
So for those that don't know, a DM...
He's drinking whiskey.
Yes, he is...
Sexton single malt Irish whiskey is a good, not good, it is a great whiskey. It is a smooth whiskey, and it is the best whiskey.
And so, yeah, for those that don't know, a DM is a dungeon master. So today's episode, we're going to be talking all things D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, where I admit, take my geek card away, I know absolutely nothing about Dungeons. Well, okay, not nothing. I know very little about the world of Dungeons and Dragons. So
We're here to ask, can you geek then, Steve?
that's,
what I mean?
we're going to find out.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, not knowing anything is great because you can have veterans and newbies all sitting at the table, and it comes down to, is the DM, or sometimes referred to as GM, which is a game master, is this person going to build this world and create this experience?
Yeah. So, Joe, you bring up the point, the reason you're here. Just to kind of put it out there, Dungeons & Dragons is something that's been around for a long time, and there's a lot of importance in the players that play the game. But in every experience I've played outside of Dungeons & Dragons, any pen and paper game that you're doing, it is the DM or GM, it is your dungeon master who makes or breaks the story, makes or breaks the interactions, controls the group for the same reason you're talking about, where you have anywhere from beginners to your very advanced players. The DM is the one who can structure the symphony of progress and get these players to all be on a level of not only happiness for what they're looking for individually, but coming together as a group. And I know that you put together, different games for, novice players as well as advanced players. And that's kind of what we want to break down today, is just kind of the different aspects from your perspective on being a DM, talking to a guy like me who, I'm your run-of-the-mill average player. I've played a lot of different pen and paper games. I've even tried to DM, which is not my style. I'm not good at it. But, I have no real in-depth knowledge to Steve here, who's a very, very novice, never played the game, doesn't, has an idea of what it is, right? You look at our logo, and there's a D4 there. There's a reason there's a D4 there, right? Because, in the inspiration of when you talk about dice rolling, right, crit fails, crit successes, that all comes from Dungeons and Dragons, man. That's like any stat thing that you see in a lot of games all takes its inspiration from D&D. D&D has been a staple in the geek community and in its involvement within a lot of different cores of where games come from. So I guess that's the best place to start for you, Joe, whereas you're going to kind of take reins on this. Our first question, which we discussed when we were having a beer the other day, is talking about the state of the game. So I would love to hear your opinion as a DM and as a player and as a fan, where you think the state of the game was in its beginnings to its evolution all the way to today.
So, I love this question because this question represents where we are in, the nerdy world. Geeks are uniting, and, it is a great thing to see. You're seeing things such as critical role with, a bunch of voice actors sitting around, as with Matt Mercer, who is the DM, and as he puts it, a bunch of nerdy ass voice actors who love to play D&D, and it's like it is great because when I started playing, it was like I think 3.5, and which is arguably the most complex version of all the different editions because it was everything you could think of had a specific different role, and it was really, really intense, and it was very rules driven, but with the rise of technology and the way it's going and things, it's been beautiful to see that, like, when we started playing, and Aaron, I know you can relate to this. Like, you get down and like you get your group of friends that play, and this is like a secret society. You've got special handshakes, and you don't let anybody know because you'd get made fun of, and it's not like that anymore. It's like I'm a nerd and I'm proud.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a great point, and Steve and I discuss this a lot about how geek culture in general has changed, and the side of it, where geeks stand, and even it's funny because that stigma still holds true. Like, even though people are more open about it, people still hear Dungeons and Dragons, and it seriously, above anything else, is still the most nerdy thing that you can mention you do. Like, you could talk about playing Magic.
It's a badge of honor for the nerd community.
So because this is a perfect segue. Well, not a segue, but my wife is really big into the show Suits, and I watched the latest episode with her last night while I was watching the baby. And in the show, the two of the people, they're a couple, they were getting ready to leave the office, and they asked another lawyer, and they're like, "Do you want to come play Catan with us?" And it's another pen and paper game that's now making it into this world that more and more people are now seeing. Because I know I had a few people, like friends at work today, I could hear them talking about Catan, and I was like,
"You ever play Catan?"
In Suits, they said, "Do you want to come to our house and play Catan?"
Have you ever played Catan?
Have I? No.
Settlers of Catan?
No, I have not. I've wanted, one of my real life friends here, he owns it, and we've been trying to organize a night to start a group.
It's an ordeal.
It looks crazy, and I know it's super expensive to get a copy of the game. Even
what?
I was looking, it was like $150 for a full set.
Man. Jess and I have. Oh well, yeah. If you buy all the expansions, man. Settlers of Catan.
Yeah,
bro.
I look back at my giant stack of all my modules and books for D&D. I'm like, yeah.
I would never think to try and get every edition of D&D. Sorry, I know I'm getting us. This is what we do on this show. We get sidetracked. We get distracted.
No, like.
But Catan's on a different level even, because that's one of Jess's favorite games in the world. Settlers of Catan is great. She unfortunately left the board game on the aircraft carrier before she departed it, so it's gone along with my Flux Batman Adventures version with my special edition Clayface card. It's all gone. But that's like a board game, right? Like I could show you stacks and stacks of board games. I think D&D still goes a level deeper. Like being into indie board games, well, Catan's not even really indie anymore, but like there was a certain,
It made a huge comeback too.
Yeah, and it's huge, but like you talk about like pen and paper compared to playing a board game like that, unless there's a version of Catan I don't know about, but I'm thinking like Settlers of Catan where you have the robber and you trade, wood and you trade your lumber and your sheep and your wheat and stone and things like that.
It's again, I don't know a lot about it, so it was just really cool to see, because I know people print tiles and stuff, and so
way to bring your segue in. That was an awesome segue, Steve.
Yes, and ruin the whole
straight into board games.
Yeah, straight into board games. Forget D&D.
Completely away from D&D.
I got you.
Everybody,
you ready
Joe,
for this?
we're probably here to talk about Settlers of Catan. So what would you say the most strategic thing is? Do you want to get all the knights, or do you want the longest road? What are you looking for in a game of Catan? Is that not it? Is that not what we're doing? Oh, my bad. Yeah. So
well, there's a lot of things to learn from that as far as PM goes, because a lot of times when you're building like one of my favorite sayings is, it is not my story as a DM. My job is to create the world. It is your job as a player to tell me your story. And so a lot of times, like, you're going to come to towns and all that in D&D. And so there's going to be a whole economic system in there. And, so when your players are like, the whole goal in D&D is like, get rich, baby. So like you get, all this gold and all this plunder and like the loot that you've amassed, and it's like, well, what do you do with it? So like Catan is great because it's like, it teaches you the economics of the system, and it's like, okay, I can pull that knowledge, plug it back into here. And I do believe such like with the new like systems, not systems, but new technology that's out there, things like Roll20 and D&D Beyond, like you can have a lot of those systems added into it, and it's beautiful,
Yeah, and we had a bit of a disagreement the other day. And I'd like to touch on that a little bit, because it stays back to the original question of where the state of the game is now and where it was. You talked about how D&D used to be like this secret society. I remember when I played with one of the managers at a local game store that I would go to, and we didn't play.
That's where you had to play. It was like,
right, and well, that was the thing. We didn't even play at the Comic Box. That was the name of the place, and in Texas, we didn't play at the Comic Box, dude. The group of friends, we got together with this dude at his mom's house, and we played there. Like out in the country where you don't. And then when you get to school, none of you are looking at each other like, oh yeah, you remember what our wizard did? Like you talked about that in private. Whereas now, I could, we're having a podcast right now that anybody could turn on and listen to, and we're all freely talking about something that used to have such a stigma to it. But back to the point of D&D still has a bit of that stigma.
Oh yeah,
the state of the game.
I've seen it today and all that, where like we'll touch on this a little later, but I make miniature terrain because I'm like, they don't make stuff like this, and like you can go on Etsy and find something close, but it's not what you want. So like I'll make stuff that I need or I want because it fits a specific encounter that I'm running at this point in time.
Which is like a whole nother level of nerd, right? Like
Yeah.
you're on another level at that point. So when you talk about the state of the game socially, you got into a little bit of the state of the game technologically. So you talk about when it came out back in the day.
Oh yeah, back in the day, it was, you take the backside of like wrapping paper because it's a 1-inch gridded square, and you sit there with markers and like just other game pieces to represent, and you still had fun, and it was always great. But you didn't talk about it because you didn't want other people to know, because you're like, I had so much fun this weekend sitting around for 4 hours, rolling dice and cussing the DM because my roll wasn't high enough.
Well, yeah, and you talk about that's again to that state of where it is socially, where now we have things like the Geek and Sundry and the things they do. I think that's Matt Mercer is the name that you had mentioned.
Critical Role crew.
Critical Role, right? That they do all these, and they openly play these cool little games in D&D and things like that. But also in TV, I mean, Stranger Things is one of the most popular shows on TV, and they've made D&D like a staple thing as a part, like the Mind Flayer, all the things that come from
the
what
Demigorgon was part of their game.
Yeah,
right.
It was so, like, seeing that, like, the nerd in me was just so proud. I was like, yes,
The Big Bang Theory.
show that.
The Big
Yeah,
Bang.
it's like-
In their last season, they had that big D&D game where it was like all the big celebrity nerds had their secret D&D game that they played. They've been bringing it out, and so I don't want to. Oh, sorry. No, go.
Hearing like other casts in like movies playing D&D like in between shoots because they had such a long time to go, and they're actors. They do this professionally, so like I could just imagine what their campaigns were like. Like that had to be great.
And it'd be like the DM would probably be like some production assistant that just had way too much time on his hand, knowing, okay, this is the cast we're going to have.
All I do is sit here and hold a pole and think all day long.
Yeah.
I assume Tropic Thunder is somebody's real life D&D story come to life, and Robert Downey Jr. just couldn't help himself. You know what I mean? I'm just a dude playing another dude.
It really, like, that's how it is. Like,
Right.
and it's like, it's not that far off. And like with new players and stuff, like one of the things like that it's intimidating when you get a new player in a group with veterans. Like it is terrifying for that person because you figure out like real quick, like, oh my God, like these guys are like A1 huge nerds. And like B, like they're having conversations as if like they don't know each other and what's going on. And that's how it's supposed to be, because in D&D, it's a series of storytelling. Like it's all storytelling, and you tell me your story, you tell me your story, and it's as simple as, I want to go to the tavern tonight and collect information to see what the bandits of the next town over have been up to, because I heard they have an informant here. Okay, tell me the story on what you want to do.
So let's talk about that a little bit with new players, because you discussed that, and I can't help but think that is probably one of the harder jobs for you, because when you're setting up a campaign and you think about all the advances we have for different, methods for people to get a hold of this information or things they've seen maybe on TV or on Critical Role, the different types of new players I would categorize as like a group of friends who all are learning together, a group of strangers all learning together, and then what I think becomes far more complicated, is maybe not more complicated, but a group of familiar friends who want their friend to get into it, but they're extremely new. And then you have the complete group of like they're all advanced with one new or two new people, but they know them, right? They already have a comfort with each other. And then what you were talking about, where you have a bunch of, for instance, like you have your crew of advanced players. If I came in, I still consider myself a new player. Like I've played D&D, but now I don't know all the rules ins and outs, right? I don't even know still how to make a character sheet, despite the many character sheets I've made. Like I don't know how to do it from memory. It still need help, reference in the book. And you probably have a lot of that with all the characters you made. A lot of that's pretty memorized for you, right? And I've seen advanced players that are like that. So being that new player amongst a group of advanced players that you don't know, that you don't have comfort with. So I'd love to know how it is for those different scenarios with what experience you've had and what you think is hard or simple, or maybe advice for new players in how they can be in those different scenarios. Like when you're with your friends and you're comfortable, it's a little easier to get into it. But if you go into just cold turkey into a frickin' D&D game with people you don't know and you don't know the rules very well and they all do, I mean, how do you deal with like the snobby versus the helpful? You know what I mean?
So if the players are good, like the veteran players, they will show you how the world goes. And because there's a rule, it's like, hey, don't meta game at the table, which is talking Like, okay, like let's say a scenario, like I'm presenting you this situation in, and it's like watching Scooby Doo. You're like, okay, I know it's Mr. Wilkinson, who the guy who cuts
It's wearing the
grass.
mask of the
Yeah,
ghost.
I know who that is. That's metagaming. Don't do that. You know, you know, you're playing a character. Your character doesn't know, and so as a DM, my job is to facilitate a good time and a good story. So with new players, I will bring them in and I'll write them in, or if we're all starting together with a bunch of new players or some veterans and some new, I'll write a situation in where it's like, I'm going to introduce you, and you just hang tight. And when I introduce you, you tell me about your character. What's his name? What does he look like? Kind of things like that, and we can develop the background and the character and all that as we go. If you're unsure, and as far as rules go, they're guidelines. Like that's the one thing I can not stress the most with D&D. They are guidelines. Every table and across the world that plays D&D is going to have home rules, and they'll differ from what it says in the book, and that's okay, because the successful campaign is everybody's having fun. And with a new player, trying to get them to be their character, I will ask you questions, and or so when you ask something, I'll ask, is this Errane that's talking, or is this, Gragnar, the mighty Ophanmaker, the barbarian, saying,
The Ophanmaker. I
That
told
is-
you, his name's Family Slaughterer. I don't leave it behind. All right, orphans alike. I don't need them growing up to come back and kill me when I'm enjoying my retirement.
No witnesses.
No witnesses. That's
no
right.
witnesses, no jail time. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah. So I really like to bring in, and like, so I will act out characters, and I will go above and beyond trying to make this a immersive situation, because the more immersive that I can make it, the easier it is for a new player to come in and be like, okay, my name is Gregory the Archer. I was on the front line in the Great War, and I was separated, and I was knocked unconscious, and and the development starts from there. And it's like, okay, we can have all these backstories, and which it gets developed in before the whole campaign, like before we sit down and I start telling you the world, like developing a character in a campaign. It revolves around what is your players' characters and what do they want as a campaign. Because if I have a campaign where it's like, hey, we're going to do a bunch of, Mission Impossible and Casino Royale type missions, and, they're like, I would rather hit things. Like, they're not going to have fun.
I'd rather make orphans. Can you let me? Please?
I'm named the Ophanmaker.
I get to make orphans. So you were saying, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Perfect segue.
Yeah.
Case in point, right there.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was recently playing with my my buddy Jeremy, who was my neighbor back in Washington, and he invited me over to play D&D, and it was me, kind of a new player, with a mix of veterans and a mix of newer players. They already had an established campaign, and the DM pulled me aside and he asked me kind of what I wanted to do. He asked that very question. And honestly, man, by the time, well, alcohol helped, but by the time we were a few drinks in, I had told him what I want, and he had this really cool idea for the campaign. He'd already been in progress. He's like, oh my gosh, we could interweave this elf, if you want to do like an elf druid. Because basically, I just wanted a companion. I wanted a familiar, so I just had a giant dog carried.
It's like, I don't care what I do.
Just give me the dog.
A dog.
Yeah, I need a
John
giant
Wick.
Yep, I need a Clifford-sized dog that looks like Thunder, my dog, and I want it to hold barrels of ale. That's all I wanted to do.
Every roll,
He's just sitting there with thumbprints on his bridge of his nose, like, okay.
every roll I get, all I'm doing is getting you drunk.
Yeah, quite a bit, because it never fails. As a DM, just remember, you're going to spend months and months and months on the perfect campaign. And the players are going to take that campaign, ball it up, throw it in a trash can, and the ADD fest will happen. It never fails.
And I love where you're going with that, because we're actually following an outline. Steve and I never follow an outline. But I would like to skip ahead in it real quick and hit two of these last bullets, because I think that they go with the new players.
Yep.
And I kind of want to see how you deal with this, because I've seen both, and they are points that I think are very difficult to deal with in some cases, specifically when the DM is already, like, so if I'm the new player and I'm coming in with the DM at least friends with like half the party, right? And the other half, they might not be friends, but they're at least, colleagues that they know each other and they've been playing a little bit, and I'm the new player. How do you deal with for instance, me and the rogue, who happened to be my next door neighbor, Jeremy? Our characters enjoyed getting drunk. Ever since I joined the party, we just got wasted all the time, and we had fun messing with the dwarf. But it came down to, we were kind of more the, what I would call, fun players. And I'm not saying that everybody isn't having fun, but when I say fun versus serious, what I'm saying is you have people who want a serious campaign. They're looking for a serious story. They're looking for seriousness, and they kind of don't want to mess around, right? Like, and you get, if you have a party of people who might not know each other as well, and you get that kind of mix of your serious players looking for a very serious thing, and like you said, you're interviewing them beforehand, and half the other half of the party is just trying to have a good time. How do you mix that in to appease everyone, or is that kind of like is that fuel for a fire that really just is going to get out of control really quick?
So, for me, I try to balance the players. So I might write like a whole campaign, and I go, okay, I know I'm going to have this many encounters, and I start trying to design those encounters around a specific want in a specific person, because that gives everybody their time to shine. Because I don't care like who you are, what nerd you are, being out there, and when you're playing a game and it's like, you want that glory, you want that, look what you've done, here is your reward. Everybody wants that. That's the fulfillment that you get. So for me, I take key points. And so I will go, okay, your character is looking for a long lost sword because your family has lost it to a thief, and you are seeking vengeance on who stole it. There's going to be a side story that I'm going to implement this. So in this, room full of like thieves in this cave that's hidden out somewhere,
right?
Part of the loot is, hey, I might show like here's the scabbard from that sword. I'm gonna plug in different things to engage this or that person.
So they feel like they're getting their own personal quest.
Yes.
Even though it's not obvious. It's not like you're catering to that one person the whole time, but just incidentally they happen to find this beautifully etched, interwoven like leather working wrapping to a nice metal, you know what I mean, finely crafted piece of art, and their eyes light up as you're telling the story.
Yes.
And they know that you're giving them something to their own quest. So despite maybe the silliness, or maybe during a serious campaign you're giving the silly guys like, oh, and you found this old geezer who can't remember where his pen is, his feather.
Oh yeah.
And it's in his hair, and the serious players, he or she could still be happy with the because you made it smooth, you as the storyteller, right? And I think that's special.
So that kind of leads to a question I have, because I'm a new player, completely fresh. How would you as a DM deal with, say, like the more serious player? Because honestly, if I'm getting into a game, I want to have fun. I'm going to be the fun player. I want to laugh. I want to joke. I want to have a good time with the people playing, and probably most likely going to be friends, but I want to have a good time. And I know there's people that take it very serious. How would you deal with, say, them, because I'm a newer player, maybe getting frustrated with me taking longer, trying to decide on what to do, or a decision in a move, or trying to figure out like my backstory as we're going along?
That's like great. And so if I've got, say, some players that are, picking on like a new player, and like I'm gonna immediately like take a moment and I'm like, hey guys, listen, we're here to have fun. All right. You all have loved this game. We've enjoyed this game. This is their first time. Show them the ropes. We might write your backstory as, hey, like I'm a new player. I've never played. And I can go, okay, this is perfect. You are a new soldier in the army. Let's branch off of this. You're unwise to the world. These guys have been out in the mud, and they're battle hardened, and you're this fresh recruit coming in. I'm gonna take them aside and let them know, like, hey, we got a new player. I want you to know the ropes. And it all comes down to communication, asking questions.
So do you feel like let's say somebody doesn't let off of it, they're just getting frustrated, that veteran player that Steve's talking about, like he's taking his time, he really wants to know what he's looking at, he's asking you a lot of questions, like he's like, well, does plus strength, is that like really good, like I don't is that really a good thing for me, like I don't, and this other person's like, holy crap, like is this seriously what we're doing right now, like they don't even know that strength's going to help them swing harder. Like, how do you, at that moment, and let's say you're the DM, like that's your best friend, that's the person getting seriously upset. And I'm not saying that is, but I'm just in that scenario. Like, how do you make the new player comfortable with asking these questions and deal with this veteran who's just will not stop getting upset that they're no longer having a good time because it's taking too long?
So, as a DM, I am essentially the god of the world. I have created.
I was so hoping you'd say it.
At some point, I was planning on saying this at somewhere in here. It's like, I am your god. You will obey. It's like,
I run everything.
Because like it gets frustrating when you gotta like, man, like I'm gonna have to write a whole new character and all that. It's like, I will kill your character. Like, I will threaten you, and I have stopped a campaign before because somebody was like that. And I was like, look, man, this is my campaign. You are my players in my campaign. We have a new player. I expect everybody to help the new player, bring him into the fold, because in everything. Like, you don't want that, like, out in the real world. You know, have a created world where we can be whatever we want to be. And you're being a dick.
When God gives you lemons, find a new God. Still your other God. I am DM. You can't be a dick right now. Like, ease up. Because just like you said, with the state of the game changing, the best way to have more nerds is to be friendly and welcoming to new nerds who want to be nerdy. You know what I mean?
And with the online abilities now, like, you can play D&D online with other people, and I do believe, like, that's a little bit easier for people to role play into, because you're not face to face, and a lot of people become intimidated by that. And I understand that. Like, it's taken me several shots of whiskey to be that innkeeper or that shopkeeper that, my name is Helga. I am the potion maker. How can I help you today? You're looking for potions? I have love potions. Stamina potions if you're looking for extracurricular activities at night. You know?
Let's say you mix those and you're going to have a good time. I think you're going to exceed your 4-hour limit. You're going to see a doctor.
You might need to see the cleric if you...
I think my wooden stick has got +3 strength right now. I don't know what to do with it. It's able to fight metal swords. I can no longer sheath this bad boy. What am I to do? I love it it's funny. I got off track from my earlier point where we talked about our disagreement, where I said that I think that some of the magic is lost in these I think some of it's, and it was an argument with, or not an argument, it was a discussion that we were having with another friend of ours that we mentioned before, Popo, who plays, with friends of his on D20.
Yeah.
And I was talking about how I think that, some of that magic kind of goes away with that. And you did disagree for that exact point you said. Like, for some players that don't like to be in character, it's nice to hide behind the keyboard, hide behind the computer, and kind of you might get comfortable with these people where you could play a live game with them in person if you ever met at like a convention or an expo or something. But at first you're getting to know them by being safe behind the same character you would be behind if you were playing World of Warcraft or any other video game.
Yeah, and it's great, to be like comfortable because, to touch on, where is it then and where is it now? Like, a lot of people, and you were saying, like, there's some people hold a stigma about it, like, oh, you're playing D&D, you're a nerd. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I am.
Sure am. Thanks, so.
As a DM, like, I can pull those skills in the everyday life. Like, how do you wing something because things got derailed? And it happens. It's going to happen. And you're going to make mistakes. And as a new player, you need to understand you're going to make mistakes. As a new DM, as a veteran DM, veteran player, you're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. And
everybody started not knowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, there's been like things that's come up in like a campaign that I've ran where I'm like, you want to do what? Like, I'm trying, like, mentally I'm sitting there, I'm like, what?
You're like, why did I invite this guy to the game?
It's like, well, there's 4 months of planning that I just threw out the window because they murdered the one person they needed to interrogate. Like, okay, you didn't ask questions. You just went straight for the kill.
Was his name the Ophanmaker?
You're gonna have the murder hobos.
Yeah.
I make children cry a lot, like when I wore my Oogie Boogie costume at Emerald City Comic Con.
I saw that picture. That was a
beautiful costume. Which that actually brings up a really good point. Dressing up, because you said being in character is very important. So again, as a new player, I know it's obviously probably going to depend on the group you're playing with, but how important is dressing up or not? Or do you see it happening? Like,
So I will dress up sometimes. Like I have a Jedi robe that I've gotten, and which is perfect for a DM robe, and because I have to set the pace. So you see me, and I'm trying to immerse you into this world, and the more immersion that you can get, the better. And because it's easier for players to be their characters. So if a player wants to dress up as the Ophanmaker and carry around a Cabbage Patch doll, you know, like, you do you, man. Like, I will, I'm going to look at you, I'm going to laugh, and we're going to have fun.
God, did you know that now if we ever play together, I am so naming my character the Ophanmaker, and I'm going to bring it doll. It's just going to happen.
I welcome it, and like I will make a specific campaign around like you believing that this is an actual baby, but everybody in the world is like, why is he carrying around this doll? I am the Ophanmaker.
This was my first orphan. So that's actually that's actually a great question, or leading into a great question I had is, how do you as a DM come up with a campaign?
So what I will do is say you two want to come together, and ideally you'd like to have about 4 players. You know, I've had as many as 6, and that really gets rough on the DM.
Yeah, I think 5 would be like a good capacity, honestly. Like 4 I think is honestly perfect, but I think 5 would be like the upper limit for what you're handling.
Yeah, and because as a DM, like I'm setting up encounters and all this, but I won't do any of that until I go, what kind of campaign do you want? Like, what are you looking to see? Like, you tell me what kind of details you'd like to see in a campaign, because ultimately every campaign is the same. It's the same story in any other anime or any other game, and it comes down to like a simple little saying: somebody wants something badly and is having trouble getting it. And so that somebody, you can make a villain or a player. And like I was saying before, you are looking for the sword of your ancestors that has been stolen, and you're having trouble getting it because, you know, they're running because they know the Ophanmaker is coming to make orphans.
Oh my God.
It comes down to like ask questions, like don't be afraid. And so I've been planning a one-shot campaign, which is a fancy term for saying it's a one night, like you have a single encounter with a short little run, and it's great because it lets you throw these wild ideas and test things that you want to do for a long campaign, because there's some campaigns out there that have been going for years and years.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
And
So that was going to be one of my questions, is so because as a newer player, because I know, like when I was a kid, the few people I knew that played it, they were friends, and I never played, and I wish I did.
It lets you into the inner circle.
I wanted to get into the inner circle, and I never went. But they had campaign. They I know their characters kept, like they had one character that they always played. So that was always, I think, part of what held me back from joining is it was like I felt like I would be left behind. So like I come from a World of Warcraft MMORPG style background. I played WoW like there was no tomorrow. And I know it's daunting as a new player going into that, having to try and catch up
Yeah.
to your friends.
Yes, it can be overwhelming, but you have to be able to introduce this character and introduce this to the party as just a random encounter. Like, there's a man that's been being mugged and has been beaten up on the side of the road, and your party investigates, and there's your new character, and you're a young, bright-eyed but swollen-eyed no-moneyed individual who just got mugged.
And that's actually, it's funny you bring that up, and I know I've brought my alcoholic elf druid up quite a bit, but what made that deeper, what was actually the big surprise is there was a certain like league of elves that were evil from past war, and it turned out that the reason I was the way I was that my elf was one of the druids. When they found out I was a druid, it turned out that it was the druids, that sect of druids that were bad, and I was with them. Those were my crew, and that I had exiled myself after I realized what they were doing was very wrong, and I was drinking my problems away. So there was like this cool, intricate story that me and the DM had hidden from the rest of the crew, but it didn't make my interaction with the crew any, like, it was this cool surprise that the DM was really excited about being a part of, but like I acted my character to a T. There was no reason to share that information, and it was a cool secret to like hide and have fun with. Like I said, their campaign had already been going on, so what the DM did was just like, okay, your character is about this level with them, so that it evened out, right?
Yeah.
So he worked with me on the side and showed me exactly, what to roll to catch me up, and kind of, I didn't get all the cool perks from all the stuff they were doing, but there was other neat perks he had for me based on my background, just like you said, when you tell the story, and it just made it really, really fun, especially when it was all revealed. And the dwarf specifically, like, he had problems with that. The rogue had a past of his own that we didn't know about. There was another surprise that had been hidden from the beginning that we didn't find out till later. It was just really neat and fun. But yeah, you talk about the one-shots. I'd never actually heard one-shot before until you told me about it. So, Steve talks about how these characters continue on. Do you ever allow, or do you like allowing people to bring their own characters in? For instance, let's say Steve did a one-shot with another group under the, when we talk about like 3.5 or 5, we're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, we're talking about like 3.5 edition or 5th edition, which is the set of rules for D&D. And, there's different monster manual. When he talked about his collection, when Joe was talking about his collection, how expensive that can get, it's because as a DM specifically, there's many, 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 many intricate manuals that are involved with each edition that gives you more ability to tell side stories, new monsters, new encounters, new stuff. And like you said, where the rules aren't so important, they're a guideline. As the DM, where he talks about DM as God, there's a reason for that. DM is God to make it fun for everyone. The fun part's the key. So he might smidge the numbers a little bit just to make this one thing very interesting. So do you allow?
Cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So do you allow, or have you ever allowed like continued characters from other DMs' stories to come into yours?
So, I have not particularly allowed like other DMs characters to come in. I've never actually really had that scenario pop up.
Okay.
But I have had other stories pop up that I've pulled in. Like, one of my players, he has a character named Forgrim Firebeard, the dwarf paladin, and I've been going systematically through each player's backstories, and like, this encounter is based around you. So I'll bring in, and it's like, Forgrim left the dwarven race, and like a lot of research on my end to realize that how bad that is, and like, there's thank you Tolkien, like rip. So I've pulled like other stories in to this campaign as just like a tribute to like the only other nerds will get. So I was there facing down the Sister of Fate, who wants to take over as the ruler of the underworld. And she has manipulated the world and changing the world so that she can develop an army against Death and his army and his generals to take over. So I've been bringing them in, and like every place that I go, and it's like, this is your backstory, you know, like again, it's all about like sitting down with all the players beforehand, talking about the backstories and all that, so that everybody is comfortable with each other's backstories. So it's like, okay, like I know what's going on, but you leave out like certain plot twists and stuff like that you want to keep secret and all that. And so with Thorgrim, he left the Dwarven family. He renounced his name. He became a broken shield. And don't ask me, I don't remember what it's actually called in Dwarvish. I actually I did for that moment, like,
yeah, but you prepared it for that story.
Yeah. And so his thing is, it's like, I took him to, they were arrested by a paladin order after sacrificing the prince of the wizard, you know, and he was like, he was stayed in character because he was like, I was like, remember, you're a paladin. This is wrong. You're taking an innocent life and sacrificing it to a dragon.
Yeah, smart. I'd give whatever I needed to a dragon.
You know, and I promised them a temple full of gold, and it was the most golden sand you would ever see. Like, I got called an asshole so many times on that night.
I will give you everything. Remember who your character is. Everything you could add. Remember what you believe in and stand for. Anything your heart could ever desire.
All you have to do is go against everything your character stands for.
Which you know deep down you can't do. Roll for it. Roll to see if you can change your ways.
Not high enough.
Not high enough.
As a new player, that brings up a question actually I have is, where do you, and again, I pretty much already know the answer to the question, but where do you pull inspiration from for these campaigns? Like, where do you get your reference for story and stuff?
So let me put on my Uggs, get my tiny Chihuahua, and, you know, order my Starbucks here. It's the most basic white girl thing you can do. I get on Pinterest.
Really?
Yes, believe it or not. Like, there's so much out there in like outlets that you can pull like different like inspirations from, like DM hooks and like game hooks, and that you can pull from and go like game hook number 168. At the party, a wizard creates fireworks. As the beautiful sparks descend, cries of pain erupt as the fireworks have turned into magic missiles.
Yeah, that's Merry and Pippin, okay?
Yeah. And like,
Gandalf warned him. Damn it. Just saying.
You know, speaking of like the Lord of the Rings, like I threw that in. So when Thorgrim finally came to the dwarven city, the stronghold that the Sister of Fate had taken over as a base of operations, there was a huge like stone door that was very hard to, you know, like you couldn't, there's no way you could pick this. There's no way you can hit it with a hammer. All that. They had a ship with cannons, and they, you know, figured out like, hey, what if I just blow the doors down? And, you know, because one of the things like I threw in was like, hey, Like, this place has been designed to defend against dragons. As a nice little throwback to Smaug.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So you mentioned Tolkien as an influence, and I think that's part of what I think Steve's talking about outside of just Pinterest, which I didn't know was an outlet for D&D, but
Pinterest, use tons of groups on Facebook, and you can get on YouTube. There's so much media outlet because of all the new technologies that we have to our advantage that we as geeks, centered our lives around, because, we weren't the popular kids, and we didn't go to, the sporting events unless we were in the band.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And so you mentioned technology, and I think that's one thing. We talked about the state of the game and how technology has changed. And the easy answer is to talk about these custom tables that are being done with the TVs in them, so that you can get on your laptop, hook up an HDMI cable, and just change the setting, right? Do a gridlock setting. But technology has also changed in the ways of people and how they build their own custom scenery, like 3D, live, painting, art. And we talked about how you kind of nerd into, you've gotten into doing some of your pieces, and I've gotten to see some of those up close. And I have to tell you, they're really, really cool. How do you feel about, the use of the TVs? Do you think that hinders or assists the DM? I'd love to hear a little bit about your sounds and how you create the ambiance in your stories, as well as the fun and kind of what you're doing to make these scenery pieces, these props, if you will, and for your parts. And if you like that more than if you had all the money in the world to build what you wanted, would you rather have a digital display underneath the character to walk on, or would you rather have all the time in the world to build your own 3D parts and pieces to put together?
I think I would rather have the technology with the parts.
Okay.
So I would, because the TV, I've seen, tons of, we've discussed, this is something that I've actually was building, or am in the process of building, is a D&D table that hides away in a dining room table. So it's still a multifunctional table, and that you can, when all the guys come over and we do the secret handshake, we pull the top off, and there's a TV underneath that I can run this, because the more you have, the cooler the things are. So I'm going to pull your focus to, I showed you some of the props that I've made.
Right.
Some walls that I've made in some stone pits, and the smoke and fire that have the lights, the flickering little tea lights that are in the bottom, that represent the actual fire. Anything to immerse the players. It's great. I'm not saying you need this, because by all means, starting out, I did not have this. I had the back of a piece of, gift wrap paper that has the 1-inch cut line, cut here grid, and all right, I have a bunch of dice and some sorry pieces, so this is what we're going to do.
So again, this goes back to why you think dressing up is important. Anything to get the players more immersed in the story is beneficial.
So I'm going to get a little self-serving here. I'm starting a small 3D printing business, and I've seen people do miniatures and stuff. And if you're doing a one shot, you're not really going to have a fully customized character, but
you would think. But no, you can customize as much as you want.
That's what I was going to say. Is it's would players bring their own minifigures and stuff to these games and be like, this is my cleric, or this is my mage? And
oh yeah, they would do that. I've seen it happen, and I've also made characters for people that was here's your, because D&D can be an expensive hobby, or you can make it as cheap as you want. Like, you can go as far as say, we're going to put the grid away, and we're going to do it in the style of theater of the mind's eye, which is I'm going to explain everything, and you're going to role play it out, you know, and that's fine. Like, however you'd like to do this, as long as you're having fun. And that, so the most important thing is if you're having fun and you're sitting with friends and you're laughing and joking, and, you know, even in the serious times, like, I have seen great DMs make their players cry, and like, that is a personal goal of mine. You know, so if you like have a 3D printer, like, that's like, you can pull that in, and it's like, man, I want to make like this character, like, and so I, you know, designed, or I've found the file, and great, like, cool, like, I might call on you to, hey man, I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to make this, and you make it for me. And so with 3D printers, like, builders and, you know, those who take up the art of making the nerdy stuff for the nerdy people, like, it's amazing. Like, I had a 3D printed Jedi Sentinel key made.
Ooh.
Yeah. And nobody really knows what that is unless you're like the really, really, really die-hard fans. You know, the Jedi Sentinels are the Temple Guardians. They had a key into the inner vault, and I had one of those keys made because I was like, that's cool, and I appreciate this. And somebody somewhere will be like, cool. And that
it wasn't me. I failed that test. It does look cool. I didn't know what it was. I failed miserably, so I didn't get to make Joe's dreams come true.
Don't worry.
You can see the hope in his eyes.
All-knowing Jedi, you know, Star Wars, like, fanatic friend of mine didn't know what it was either, and I was like, it's from this, you know. And he was like, yeah. Oh, they do have keys. Yeah. Devil's in the details.
Yeah. It's funny. You could see the hope in Joe's eyes. You see this? And it's like, is he going to know what it is? He's, oh, he has a freaking clue. Let me
it's like, oh.
And I was like, I've let him down. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. But it does look cool. It's neat looking.
Yeah. I am in the process of 3D printing a lightsaber. I'm starting over because I've calibrated my printer better and I can get much better quality than I was getting before. And
then you're going to tell me how to calibrate my 3D printer. So
I am willing to do it at any time you want.
No, I mean after you finally fix your problems.
Your printer's easier to do than mine. So.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Once you've gone to therapy, you've discussed how bad your childhood was because you didn't know the secret handshake and you couldn't get in the group.
That is exactly what has happened. I mean, the funny thing is it's like the lightsaber I'm building is a lesser known lightsaber. It's still like, it's popular, but it's not like.
Is it Darth Nihilus?
No, it's not.
Ventress's?
Oh.
It's Palpatine's.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still a popular one, but it's not like everybody prints like Luke's, or they'll print, you know, Anakin's.
Everybody loves Vader's. And
everybody loves Vader's. Everybody, but I'm like,
well, not Vader's. I like Vader's, but Luke's is.
But they're very basic designs. Like, they're intricate, but it's just.
I want Ahsoka Tano's.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need.
And so I don't. We're getting off point again here. But
secondary lightsaber was just like Qui-Gon Jinn's remake.
Welcome to the D&D episode where we talk about Settlers of Catan and 3D printing and lightsabers.
Can we go an episode without talking about a Disney-owned property?
No, impossible.
No, I'm waiting for Disney to take over D&D, and so I can roll in Mickey Mouse. Just Hey, kids. Time to die, motherfucker.
Oh, Donald Duck rolls up.
Oh my God.
You guys round the corner in the cave and a wild Goofy appears.
I have had a DM throw an Elmo at me, okay? Like, and that Elmo rocked my world.
Did he tickle you?
It hurt. I'm like, man, this little puppet is kicking my ass. And I can't do anything about it. It's embarrassing. Like, how do you hurt your buddy in the face? And when it's like, man, you just whooped my ass with Elmo. Like, how do you sleep at night?
That's when he giggles and goes, very soundly, sir.
That tickles. That's all you can't beat Elmo.
In his defense, I was a bard.
Wait till Elmo meets Orphanmaker.
I swear, a bard was the Wizards of the Coast, D&D. I think that was their way of saying, fuck you, DM. Here's some of your own shit back.
Play music and kill everyone. All right, that's
like,
how you roll.
Just music
I
and
had a
then
bard
everybody's stuff.
with like such a high persuasion at such a low level that it was insane. I persuaded a group of enemies to fight for me, and because their boss was evil and that I would treat them better, and then proceeded to thunder wave them off the edge of a cliff when I was done with them, because he was a tiefling and he didn't care.
Stupid
And
tiefling.
that same bard, like, I convinced like a group of like enemies that I was their god and that they should sacrifice themselves into my glory. And like, the DM was sitting there, he's like, you want to what? I was like, yeah, I want to convince them that, you know, basically that I'm the god, their life is meaningless, sacrifice themselves to me.
Yeah. Watch me roll these dice.
And he was,
You
yeah,
lemminged
you're gonna
them.
need like a 25 to master that. And I was like, how about a nat 20? Which is a nat 20 and critical fail in D&D is a critical fail. No matter what your modifiers are, you failed. You done goof, son. And there's a penalty. A critical success, you know, a nat 20 and success, it's like, I don't care how strong your armor is. With a natural 20, I hit you.
Yeah.
I done got through.
And I tell you, that's probably, and that's kind of where we'll stop here. But the nat 20s and nat 1s, that's where D&D creates memories. Like there's going to be some times when that happens outside of it. But I tell you, the moment a DM gets to see a nat 20 or a nat 1, you not only see it on their face when they roll it, if they, you know they did it behind their stupid little veil. They're like, and you see it, and you're like, oh, fuck. Like, oh no, we're all screwed.
This is why, though.
It hit. Let's just put it at that. It hit, and it hit hard.
This is why.
And the DM now has to figure out how they're going to save your character from dying, but make it obvious that you're probably going to die if your friends don't get to you. Like, it's gonna happen.
Times as a DM, I've tried to, like, I've fudged some things. I know. Oh my gosh.
But this is why our friend Poston can never be a DM for us, because he has the biggest horseshoe when it comes to games.
Oh yeah, dude, he rolled nat 20s all the time, and I rolled nat 1s for balance, right? And so my character would just be a bunch of screwed up, like I'd just be constantly in casts on crutches, you know, hobbling. I'd be called Hobble Man, you know.
From Ophanmaker to Hobbles.
Yeah, he would set up the game. Like, I swear, I could picture it now. He would set up a game. We'd be ready to go. We'd start the campaign. It'd be supposed to be like a 3 or 4 night campaign, and we'd all be dead in the first 10 minutes because he rolled nat 20s on all of us.
But they really are the moments, and I think sometimes nat 1s end up being a lot better than nat 20s, just because like the DM really gets to have fun with how horrible you or the monster that they're controlling, or like one of the NPCs you brought with you like fails miserably, and like they just get to really share that part of the story, and it's a good time. And I have to tell you, speaking of good times, Joe, man, this has been an absolute blast.
Yes,
Steve and I really appreciate your time on this.
I do.
I've had a blast.
It's been very eye-opening for me as a new player. So
the behind-the-scenes look at the DM.
Yeah, the evil god.
The evil god where I'm like, hey, you're level 2, right? Yeah. Okay, well, here's a dragon.
Well, here you go.
Signs, your DM hates you.
Yeah, you didn't make it. I just want you to know, don't bother rolling. You don't have it. Like you're gone.
You were a level 2 Ophanmaker. Well, did I forget to tell you that I'm here's your level 900 Widowmaker?
Yeah, that's when Popo's playing and he just rolls nat 20s and manages to kill it while the other thing's rolling nat 1.
Mimics causing trust issues.
Yeah. For
perfectly good looking normal ordinary chest, and it tries to eat you.
Yeah. It has turned into something evil.
Yes.
It's going to try to kill you.
So if anybody, well, before we even get to reaching us, how would anybody reach you if they have questions about D&D? They want to pick the mind of a DM. Do you have a way that people want to contact you? If not, it's totally fine. You can totally still not be around.
Like, mostly like, I guess the best social media would be Facebook. You know, you can look me up at Joseph C. Spalding. It's Spaulding.
All right, I will throw that in the show notes for you.
Yeah, I'd be
like a tennis
happy
ball?
to. It's like a basketball without
basketball. Is that what it is? Isn't Spalding a sports company?
Yeah, it's a shoe with a U. Like I would be like, and I'll claim like I am no expert, but I would be glad to say, hey, this is what I think, and this is my opinion, and I'd be glad to help anybody, like any new DMs. You know, they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, I wrote this giant campaign and this giant story, and they just murder hoboed through it because it happens. And there's a lesson to take away from it. If you want to write a story, become an author.
That's a good point.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, again, man, we seriously appreciate you coming on, giving your advice, and hopefully we can find another reason to venture back to this topic and have you again, Joe.
Yes, probably after my first game.
Yeah, right. We'll discuss all of his.
So much at me, and I cried.
Why weren't you my DM?
Why didn't you help me?
Oh no, I'm a mean DM. Like I throw like mean stuff at people.
Oh, it's all good.
But it's all knowing your players too. So
yeah. So with that, as Aaron mentioned, if you want to get a hold of me, I am at CanYouGeek on Twitter. He's at Southam Designs. We're on Facebook at CanYouGeek Podcast. CanYouGeek Nerds is our Facebook group. We're on Patreon, CanYouGeek Podcast. There's a long list of ways to get a hold of us. Everything will be in the show notes. So,
Discord.
Yes,
and,
Discord.
Discord, I am the Swanky Orc.
When I saw that, I loved it. I loved it.
Yes, I have wrote a character in for that just because I love the Swanky Orc.
It made me giggle very hard.
Thanks again, Joe. And later, nerds.
Later, nerds.
Later.
Today's music is used by permission from the artist Broke for Free. The song is called Something Elated. You can find it on freemusicarchive.org under the user Broke for Free.